Hello, welcome back to my channel where I review books that I have read from a Christian perspective. Welcome to my new backdrop. I am here in my dorm room and I am going to start with my book reviews. This is my first full-length video here from my dorm room, which is really exciting. And as always, I'm going to start with any nonfiction books I read and then go from my lowest rated fiction books to my highest rated fiction books so that hopefully I can end it all off on a really good positive note. And so to start off, I have my nonfiction book for the month of May, and that was What I Can Do by Mary K. Hoodhood. Now unfortunately, all of my books printed in black and white this week, and I'm currently in the works of figuring out editing software and how to edit the covers actually into the video so it's easier for everyone to see. This is about Mary K. Hoodhood, the founder of Kids Food Basket, which is an organization based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the founder, Mary K. Hoodhood, is actually paralyzed. She got in a car accident and hit her spine and she's paralyzed. I forget exactly how, but she's pretty severely paralyzed. And so this is her memoir, and I came into this thinking it was going to be mostly about Kids Food Basket, since that is what is on the cover, right? Kids Food Basket has it where you can decorate the outside of these lunch sacks, and you get to send meals to kids in school who may not be able to afford to bring their own lunch to school. And it was mostly just about her life, which was interesting, right? I think all lives are very interesting and fascinating to learn about, but it just wasn't what I was expecting, which is why this is only 2 stars. With it being founded in Grand Rapids, Michigan, pretty much where she grew up is all around the area, which was so fun since Grand Rapids is where I grew up, and it was so fun to read all these familiar locations that I grew up next to, right? There was some language, and it mentions that her daughter is a single mom via a sperm donor, which is something that may be considered concerning in a Catholic Christian book. I do have to say that I think this, for those who are Christian, Mary K. Hoodhood might be considered a Christian in name only by many other Christians, and some others may see her as another fellow Christian, which is just something to keep in mind. She also mentions that her vacation house used to be a brothel. I don't know why that was worth mentioning, but it was in her mind. But yes, overall, interesting, just not my personal favorite. And now we can move on to my fiction books. However, in the month of May, I did unfortunately have a DNF, and that was The Root Cellar by Janette Lunn. This is a standalone book, and I unfortunately had to DNF it halfway through. This is a time travel book where the place and time where they travel is during the Civil War. And I do have to say that the Civil War history of why it started, all of that, was very well researched, and that was really impressive, and I was very happy about that. However, the characters were not great. A lot of them were just jerks most of the time. They had no redeeming qualities, if any. Hopefully they got redeeming qualities by the end of the book, but certainly not at the halfway mark. There was also the Lord's name in vain taken 6 times, and as well as 2 instances of the D word. So just things to keep in mind. Now we'll move on to another slightly better book, and that was a 1.5 star read. That was Secret Money by Lois, Gladys, Leppard. I love her Mandy series, and so when I saw this series at a thrift store secondhand, one that I'd never heard of, I picked it up. However, I know why I've never heard of it, because it was just angering. This girl has thing upon thing, just terrible things happen to her. And there's not many happy things to lighten the story. And she's the mother figure to her little sister. So she also has all this responsibility that most kids her age wouldn't have. The back cover also spoiled 3/4 of the book. So part of it was angering because there was never anything new. You're like, yeah, I knew this was going to happen because it was on the back cover. There was some faith content, so that was nice. That's why I got the extra half star. Also, just something to note, if you did read this and you did enjoy it, this series unfortunately was never completed because the author, Lois Gladys Leppard, did unfortunately pass away before she was able to finish the series. So I'm kind of happy to be done reviewing that one. And now we got a 2-star, and that was Princess Academy, the graphic novel. I do not always read graphic novels because I never appreciate the artwork in it. I would much rather read a normal book that has like 2 or 3 really well done illustrations throughout the book than just a whole bunch of cheaper quality illustrations throughout. It was mostly accurate except for the fact that in the original normal book, Miri was born prematurely, so because of that she's really petite. She is 14, but it says that she's like the size of the 12-year-old. And in here she's just very average sized. So that was inaccurate. And then also in the book there's the Academy princess dress that's mentioned at one point. And it's actually mentioned multiple times and it's always described the exact same way. It's a silver gown, it's like beautiful. And in this book it was green, which was kind of jarring simply because it was a different color and that dress was described so many times throughout the course of the original book. So, whatever. But now we can go on to better books. And so this was my 3-star book. This is the second in the Ribbonley Sphere duology by Lindsay A. Franklin. Sorry about that. And this was like a fun Easter egg hunt. You got to find all these different literary references scattered throughout the book. This cover is a lot more beautiful in full color if you look it up on Goodreads. I will say though that our titular character, Camille DuLaine, did I even say the title of this book? It's The Restitching of Camille DuLaine. But Camille DuLaine is unnecessary to the plot, so that was disappointing. She could have easily been removed and the plot would have still been very much the same. But yeah, overall pretty good. There were some questions I still had about this world and how the whole magic system worked because I was never able to fully grasp it. But overall, it was a fun, quick read. I was glad to have the series be over. And now I got another 3-star. I got many 3-stars. Oath of Honor by Lynette Eason. And this is the first in the Blue Justice series. And this was pretty good, except for the fact that the beginning, like when you're introducing all these characters, was hilariously awkward. Like, this is not exactly how it went, but this is how I felt like it went. It was like, "Hey sis," said main character's older brother as he walked in and grabbed a waffle, which was his favorite breakfast food, which he has been eating every morning since he was 5 years old. You get what I mean? Very awkward, disjointed, and you're like, okay, was this really necessary? The plot was really interesting, however, I do not remember very much about it. I remember that there are deaths and murders involved though, so if you are squeamish about that, this will not be for you. However, if you love a good mystery, I think you'd probably like it, unless you've read so many mysteries that it's really easy for you to figure out the plot. Otherwise, it'll probably be a little bit, what's that word? Like, you'll know where it's going, right? So, that leads me to yet another 3-star book. And this is also the first in the series, and this is Spark of Secrets by Janis. This is the first in the Empire of Dragons series. This is a middle grade novel, and it is a retelling of both Mulan and How to Train Your Dragon, very heavily on the How to Train Your Dragon aspect. And our main character, Aura, she is very immature. She makes some very rash, impulsive decisions, but that's to be expected. And I'm really excited to see how she grows through this series because I'm sure she will mature and grow beyond that. the ending came out of nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. It was very sudden and abrupt, and I was like, whoa, I guess that just happened. Guess I now have to read the next book in the series. So the ending was not my favorite. But I am planning on finishing the rest of the series. This was fun. I enjoyed it. And the capes on the cover, if you look up this, again, if you see this cover in its full color glory, they look like Sophie and Fitz from Keeper of the Lost Cities. If you guys are familiar with that book and the artwork, they're exactly like that. Except a Sophie that Biana gave a makeover for, because this Aura character loves her bows, and so does Biana. And that leads me to a four-star book. And, okay, I finally read it. Guess what it is? I'll give you a moment. It was The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, so the first volume. And this was really good. I think it lived up to its hype, but I have not yet finished the series, and I think the series is going to be really good once it's completely over and done with. And I am just loving, like, the healthy friendships and relationships and how, like, friendships were portrayed in this book. Samwise was my favorite character. I thought he was a great guy, really good-hearted, and I could not help but be like, yes, go Samwise, you're amazing. Yeah, so I'm really excited to finish the rest of the series. However, it does, it will be a little bit of a commitment. So I also don't want to finish it, so I kind of want to savor it and not have to, like, make myself read it at a time when I don't want to. You understand what I mean? But I was very happy to finally read this. Definitely recommend. And then I have another 4-star, and this is a standalone. This is A Murder for Her Majesty by Beth Hilgartner, and this is also a middle grade novel. This is really fun, kind of. The book starts off with this girl's father being murdered, and she hears that this is a murder for Her Majesty, so she assumes that the queen will want to kill her too. And so she seeks refuge with choir boys. She disguises herself as a choir boy. And there was just so many romps and fun times to be had. Her interactions with these boys was absolutely hilarious, and it was so much fun. The Lord's Name in Vain, however, was used over 15 times. I don't know how many times because I ran out of those little sticky tabs to mark it. But that is definitely something to keep in mind. As well as the D word being used quite frequently by the villains. Our villains were quite fond of that word. And also, this takes place with the Catholic Church, and the main villain is a priest in the Catholic Church, and some people may not appreciate that, but that's just, I mean, that's part of the story. But all in all, really fun. I enjoyed it. And if it had not been for how many times the Lord's name was taken in vain, I would have actually rated this 5 stars because it was just so much fun. And then onto my final 4-star book before I get to tell you about my 5-star book. My final 4-star book was Unyielding Hope by Janette Oak and her daughter, Laurel Oak Logan. And this is the first in a series. And this is about a girl. She is a part of, if you are familiar with America's Orphan Trains program, Canada had like a similar program, and she was a part of that. And so her parents died, her sister died, she was placed in a new home, and at the start of the story, her adoptive mother has also died, and she and her father are planning on moving to some country in Europe, I don't remember what country, when all of a sudden she gets notified that she inherited a small estate from her birth parents. And so there's a bunch of craziness that goes on with that. And then also, at one point in the story, there are other children involved who are also part of the same program she was a part of. And I just love all the children in this book. There are so many children involved. And I just love it when children are part of books, because not many stories that have a romance in them and like self-discovery in them really bother to include children. But in here, like, one of the point of views, I believe the point of view is her love interest, Her name is Lily, by the way, if I did not mention that. And then also a young boy who is in her care at one point. So, really recommend. This is really sweet, and this was my very first Janette Oak book, like adult book, because I have read some of her children's books, like Spunky's Diary. Spunky's Diary is really great, and it was actually the first chapter book I ever read on my own as a child, which is so special. But definitely, this was really fun and enjoyable, and I recommend. And now this finally leads me, drumroll please, to my 5-star book. And that was Composer Anonymous by C. Ash. This cover is gorgeous in its full color splendor and glory. It's a purple cover, and I love purple. This is a reverse Cinderella retelling. So our main guy, Colin, he is the Cinderella character. He has 2 stepbrothers, a stepfather. He is a violinist, but he's not a very successful violinist, and he can't really escape from his home. And then our main girl, Katrin, she is this princess. And this is a society that's set in the 25th century during the Victorian Renaissance, where genetic perfection is what you strive for. And our main girl, Katrin, is like the epitome of genetic perfection, and people are like, look up to her. But our main boy, Colin, he's at an abnormality. He was born autistic when no one else in the world at this time is autistic, and people don't know what to do with that. So there is a very strong pro-life message in this book, because what happens when something is wrong with you in a society, where does that put your worth as a human? And there was also a bit of an Esther storyline, like from the biblical story of Esther throughout. And I can't really say more because I don't want to spoil any part of this, of the book. Our main girl, Katrin, she is very frustrated because she is just the figurehead for the government. She's just like the face, the pretty face, right? She actually has no power, and she is very controlled. She's about as controlled in every movement she makes as Colin. So they have to both really search and find who they are and how they can help the world. One thing that people might be a little concerned by is that there is a psychopath in this book. For those of you who don't know, psychopath is someone who is incapable of feeling emotions. And this psychopath is a moral psychopath, but he's a psychopath nonetheless, so just something to be aware of. Also, the author, she did the artwork for this cover, so definitely check it out. I think she did a good job. And that leads me to the conclusion of my May reads. I read a grand total of 11 books, counting the DNFs. So I had 10 completed books, 1 DNF. And I was house sitting for a friend, which is what gave me the amount of free time I had to read this many books. But it was so much fun. Thank you so much for watching, and I cannot wait to do my June wrap-up video. I really do enjoy making these videos, and I am really grateful to you for watching. Bye!